The fantasy football edition of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content, and contests, including our NFL win totals contest. Win a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Emerson Beery, with my co-host, Justin Bruni. How you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good, brother. It's Sunday night, feeling right, ready to talk some tight ends. Been a long week, but, always nice to get back to the pod, talking some fantasy football. We're about 32 days away from kickoff here. Very excited for the season to start. Already made some money on the Hall of Fame game, so feeling good, feeling right. Sunday night, let's ride.
I love it. I've had a long weekend at the bar, but I am off tomorrow, taking it easy. Long brunch shift today, but made some money. Justin, I know you're headed to the Fantasy Expo this week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's on the agenda? What's your biggest plans this weekend?
I mean, there's a lot to do. We're going to be playing some poker. There's a poker tournament. We're going to be playing some bags, some beer pong, some good old fashioned, backyard games. I think me and Andrew are going to get matching tattoos for breakfast Saturday morning. Not sure if that's still on the table or not. I know there are some, preaching maybe some practice for the flag football tournament. There's some really odd rules and regulations to their format. So, maybe, a little refresher would be good for us. Maybe some route running, getting some throws in. I don't believe we have a quarterback yet. There is no one that has stepped up and said, hey, they're ready to lead this team behind the line of scrimmage. I don't believe there's any rushing plays allowed. They try to really negate like any sort of like physical contact at all. So, I'm excited, get ready to, connect with everybody in the space, tip a few back, have a good time. And then of course, pitch the brand, get, pound the table, for SGPN, for gambling, for fantasy football. So yeah, very excited to get out there and show off our colors.
I love it. Fabulous, my friend. I hope you all have a good time. I know it's going to be fun, and then you'll be learning. I'm sure you'll be meeting a lot of the biggest names in the fantasy industry as well. But with that, we'll jump into it today. We're going to be talking about top 24 2023 fantasy football tight ends. This is like the truth. This is, the hardcore episode. This is like, the people checking into the tight end episode in August. Those are the hardcore fantasy players. And yeah, we're going to help you talk about the top 12 guys that'll be your starters. And then, if you're in a 2 tight end league, or if you're in 2 tight end premium leagues, the starters, otherwise maybe some bye week fill-ins as well. With that though, first on the list is not a big surprise. Travis Kelce. I'll let you take it away. Why is Travis Kelce?
No. You always give me the first one. I'll say that he's finished as a wide receiver 1 in 6 out of his last 7 seasons, and the one that he didn't, he was number 2. You're wearing the KC shirt, so I'm going to let you take it away. Other than that, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward situation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say here. He hasn't shown too much signs of slowing. Well, the very interesting evolution in his game is, back in, the early Patrick Mahomes years, especially when Patrick Mahomes was airing it out a lot more. And then, this kind of correlates with Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target too. But Travis Kelce, traditionally top 12, top 10 in average depth of target, fell, I believe, all the way to number 28 last year. Lots of dink and dunk passes, but he is very strong after the catch. Travis Kelce, a lot of the time, doesn't even run a set route. A lot of the time, it's just he's so smart. He just runs to the soft spot in the zone coverage where the defenders are not, and he plants himself, turns around. Patrick Mahomes already has the ball on the way. So it's a very interesting dynamic. They have the best offensive play caller in the sport, Andy Reid. I don't think there's too much to think about here. Travis Kelce, and I think he'll probably, once again, pace the field by quite a margin.
Can I ask you a question about him? And before we move on to the next guy, because I know that we have a lot to go through here. He had a career high 110 catches last season. Do you think he can go over the top of that? Because I have the belief that he can. I mean, there's very little to no competition for touches here. Like, it's very hard for me to believe that any of these receivers who are kind of just all middling themselves and ADP and just value in general, I just can't really see any of them commanding a huge share of the offense.
I think he can push for the 110 receptions. I don't think he'll push for his yardage record. I think I don't think that's part of the offense. I don't think having Travis Kelce streak down the field for big plays is necessarily going to be a big part of the offense. So because of those reasons, I think he can push 110 catches, but I think it'll be more like last season, fall probably more in that 12 to 1,250 yard range though too.
Fair enough. Yeah, very excited about him this year. Like I said, there's just no competition. Like, I just can't imagine like Sky Moore, MVS, Richie James, Justin Ross, Rashee Rice. Like, I can't imagine any of these guys are going to command a huge target share.
Well, it'll actually probably help him better that they are, because they're not good enough to really take away any of his targets, but they can be bad enough to where the defenses are just going to be like, okay, we just got to take away Travis Kelce and make
That's true. That's true
with everything else. So hopefully that is not the case in 2023. Before we move on to our second ranked tight end, though, I just want to give one more shout out to the Sports Gambling Podcast Patreon. It is the perfect time to sign up for the diehard DGens out there. Sign up for the Patreon to get access to exclusive contests, including the NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 first place prize, plus a monthly SGP Stories podcast, an ad-free, uncensored show highlighting the best story from decades of being DGens. Sports Gambling Podcast has and always will give out their picks for free. The Patreon is a great way to support the network and fight back against corporate gambling. sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. With that, we actually have a double header here at tight end.
Oh,
I had one guy at 2. You had one guy at 2. We had the other one at 3. So Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson are tied as our tight end 2 tonight.
Makes sense.
You have Hawkinson first. I have Andrews first. Since I sold you on Travis Kelce, I'll let you sell TJ Hawkinson first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting him right where he fell last year. He finished at tight end 2 last season, backed by 86 catches and six receiving touchdowns. I just like the opportunity a smidge more. I think that the situation is a little bit better for Hawkinson over Andrews, and you're also just getting a better ADP for Hawkinson versus Andrews ADP. So I think those things combined, I just have Hawkinson as a slight edge over Andrews in my rankings because I'm looking at draft priority, the guy that I want to look to target. And I'm getting Hawkinson at a little bit of a cheaper ADP in a situation where I still see the Detroit Lions defense being really bad. They were top 5 for most points allowed per game last season. Even if they progressed from that ranking, I don't see them getting outside of the top 10 or bottom 10, however you look at it. So I think game flow is a big factor for me in this one as well. And then you just look around the room and see for the Vikings. I said Detroit right there, but Vikings also were top 5 in most points allowed last season. When he came over from the Lions, he was used much more heavily in the Vikings offense, right? It's a very good situation to get in on because, you have Justin Jefferson there, the best receiver in the league, but now you're getting the guy who finished at tight end 2 last year. And I like Jordan Addison a lot. I see a lot of upside for him this season, but I see Hawkinson as the 2 in this offense. I do believe that we're going to get kind of a split that we saw from, Tyreek Hill and Kelce's last season in 2021 in the Kansas City offense. I could easily see Hawkinson getting 130 plus targets this upcoming season, if not 140 plus, playing beside Justin Jefferson. I did a short on Jordan Addison's yardage recently, his season-long yardage. He's at about 825, and there has been like more than a handful of rookie receivers that have hit that number in the past few seasons. I won't go through the whole list, but each one of them was able to lead their team in targets, receptions, and total receiving yards. It's not as friendly of a situation. So I still see Hawkinson as the number 2 in an offense that's going to have to score a lot of points because similar to the Lions where he came over from last year, they were also bottom 5 in most points allowed last year.
I like TJ Hawkinson a lot. I like the passing offense more with the Minnesota Vikings. I just see Mark Andrews having a lot more of an open opportunity. The Baltimore Ravens are going to be passing a lot more this year. When Lamar Jackson was on last season, through the first 5 or 6 weeks last year, Mark Andrews was featured double-digit targets. And Lamar Jackson, he just sort of, when the wide receivers, when Rashad Bateman got hurt, the kind of passing offense fell apart. Lamar Jackson was hurt. Subsequently, shortly after that, Mark Andrews had a tough season. But it's just when you have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman versus Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson on the other side, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for Andrews. It was close for me. It was actually it was one of the tougher decisions I had on this list. I've gone back and forth a little bit, but Mark Andrews is the choice for me in 2023. I just see the rate. I see Lamar Jackson. He's probably going to have a career high in pass attempts, and it's just more of the clear top target.
No, I agree with you. And I think that, if you're an NFL GM and you're looking at these two, like if you're, wanting to go one direction over the other, I think Andrews is probably the answer. I think that, if you're asking me who is the better tight end, I think I would probably say Mark Andrews. But again, given the ADP, and you mentioned Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers, but also having Odell Beckham Jr. there, having an offense that I still think is going to run the ball more than the public wants to believe. I know that Monken coming there is going to elevate the passing game. A lot of 4 or 5 wide receiver sets, a lot of sideline to sideline route running, and it should open up the field more for Andrews. I think that the play calling and the new system should benefit him a lot. But when I'm looking at ADP, it's just tough for me to make that extra push for Andrews when it is that close. So that's why I favor Hockenson just a smidge more. It's very close. I think we're both in agreement of that.
Next up, it was your tight end 6, my tight end 4, Darren Waller.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't like to project injuries, and if we're not projecting injuries, another player who's going to be the clear top target in the Daniel Jones-led offense. Daniel Jones did take a step forward last year, cut out just throwing the football up in the air whenever he was tackled, made some smarter decisions.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a tougher schedule this year, but I trust Brian Dable to draw up some plays for Darren Waller. The training camp reports have been very positive. Darren Waller, I've heard that they've had debate. There have been reports that Darren Waller's had to come out, so Daniel Jones has to throw the ball to someone else. That doesn't surprise me, considering the state of the wide receiver corps. Isaiah Hodgins and Paris Campbell are the top targets there at the moment. Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, upside players. Sterling Shepard there for however long he can stay on the field. What are your thoughts on Darren Waller this season? I know you're a bit lower, but I feel like you probably say that this is a pretty close group.
I think it's fair. Here. Yeah. If I see this happen in my drafts, I'm not going like, oh, what was that? What was that, Brian? What are you doing, pal? I don't think it's like any. And again, this at the tight end position, you can go a lot of different directions here after you get outside of these top 3 guys. My only pushback to Waller at this spot is I'm just a little pessimistic about Daniel Jones' progression. So he threw 15 passing touchdowns last year. I asked Andrew Robb, my co-host on our Best Ball show, how many he thought he could throw this upcoming season. What would your answer be to that? Like, how many touchdowns is his ceiling this upcoming season? Daniel Jones, considering he threw 15 last year.
They're going to have a harder schedule. That means that Daniel Jones is not going to probably able to run the ball as much as he was. It's probably going to be him airing it out a little bit more. I could see him moving more in the range of 20 and upwards, but so that'll be his, 25 is certainly, it'll be the limit, probably less than that.
So that's similar to what Andrew said. He said 24, so about 24 to 25. When I'm looking at some of these other options here, maybe even like a Dallas Goedert, where he's in an offense where I feel is a higher vacuum for scoring opportunities, that is where I'm kind of going back and forth between like Waller and Dallas Goedert in this situation. And I still probably lean to Goedert, despite the fact that, that team has plenty of weapons, right? They've got plenty of guys that are threats on the ground. They have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, and Jalen Hurts is going to get his. I just like the opportunity that I'm getting to get more exposure to high-value touches in the scoring zone, in the red zone. And that's my only concern, is I think that Waller can probably finish with more total catches, but maybe a guy like Goedert could finish with more touchdowns, and you're kind of balancing that out. So I feel like I'm chasing just a little bit more upside with Goedert in that Eagles offense. Going to score a lot of points, has one of the best offensive lines in the NFL right now per PFF. I think it's just a better and safer situation to buy into. But Darren Waller, also a very good opportunity. Like, if you're looking at like skill versus situation, I think Waller probably the more skilled and talented tight end over at Dallas Goedert because he's athletic. He kind of plays like a receiver. He has very sure hands, very fast off the line of scrimmage. I'm just, buying the situation in favor of the player a little bit more here. So again, tomato, I'm good going either direction there. But I do think that Waller is in line for a bevy of touches this year. Just how many of them are going to be high value with a quarterback that may not exceed 20 passing touchdowns?
It's really hard to always keep all these three lists straight. Looking at yours, mine, and then the consensus that I made. It was actually Dallas Goedert actually is ahead in the consensus of Darren Waller.
No
Darren Waller's 5.
No
Dallas Goedert number 4. Correction, everybody. So top 5, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. Those two were tied. Dallas Goedert, Darren Waller. Now we will dive into our tight end 4 now. Dallas Goedert. I had him as my tight end 5. I see a gap a little bit here. I just don't know the upside with Dallas Goedert and with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both playing. The Philadelphia Eagles will still remain one of the most run-heavy teams in the league. They are going to have a more competitive schedule this year, so you could see them pass the ball more. But, man, a dual-threat quarterback who likes to run a lot, that's a lot. I know the Philadelphia Eagles have a great offense, but is that too many targets for Jalen Hurts to maintain, or do you still think he's going to in line for a strong season?
I think he's in line for a strong season. It's just, again, how are the touches going to fall? Obviously, A.J. Brown is a huge field breaker. He's going to be a massive target down the field. But I feel like those weapons in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, again, a guy who's super fast, sure hands, athletic. I feel like all those talent levels rise everybody's opportunities up even higher. A reason why you're targeting those running backs at friendlier ADPs, a reason why you target Jalen Hurts at his ADP, right? Like, it's just going to be a high scoring offense. So if you're, buying like late round targets in any high scoring offense, like, say the Kansas City Chiefs, you're just grabbing any of those receivers that you can. I want to get Dallas Goedert at his friendly ADP because he's still coming off the board typically after these other 4 that we've already talked about, Kelce, Andrews, Hawkinson, and Waller. I've seen him fall in a lot of drafts, definitely in best ball for sure. I'm expecting it to happen in redraft because of that fact. And I want to get that value because I'm not having to pay that surcharge, that high cost for the tight end position, and I'm getting a little bit value at other positions, and that's just kind of balancing it out. So I'm very high on him this season. He's finished as a tight end 1 the past 2 years. It hasn't been top 5, but he's also missed a little bit of time. And then 2 seasons ago, he was also splitting time with Zach Ertz before the trade deadline. So that season, he finished as tight end 11. Last year, he finished at tight end 12, but he also missed some time with injury. So balancing that out, I still think that he has an opportunity to finish as a top 5 tight end. And it just, again, where there's a lot of volatility at the position, I feel like he offers a safe floor. Like, I feel comfortable taking him in any format, whether it be premium or standard or PPR, whatever it is.
Shout out to our buddy Jamie in the chat. Welcome. Thanks for joining the live stream, my friend. Before we move on to our tight end 6, a young tight end that is a very polarizing player for 2023 that dynasty managers are very hopeful for. We'll just give a shout out to our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. We're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and Underdog Pick'em is a great way to get down on a ton of NFL player props, and it is available in a ton of markets. Plus, plenty of opportunities to win in their daily MLB contest. And, of course, make sure to enter Best Ball Mania 4, where first place gets $3 million. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPN. And if you wouldn't mind, if you were listening to the show at this point, if you would give a like, subscribe, rating to wherever you may be listening, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we'd really appreciate it. Kyle Pitts is the tight end 6 in our consensus rankings. I didn't feel good about it, but
Why?
I just really hate the Arthur Smith run offense here. Bijan Robinson, number 8 overall. I think they're going to want to prove a point that drafting him 8th overall was worth it. He's already the highest paid running back in the NFL. I think they're going to be designing up a lot of plays for him. And then when they're not running the ball to Bijan Robinson, they're going to be giving probably double-digit rush attempts to Tyler Algier too. So it just will be, I think, tough for a Desmond Ritter passing attack to have multiple fantasy relevant receivers every week. I think Kyle Pitts will have his big games. He's too talented not to. My favorite stat was that he was number 5 in air yards last year, which is the total accumulation of your targets, downfield, whether you caught him or not.
Yeah.
He was number 5 and missed 7 games. Marcus Mariota was just heaving in the ball.
Yeah.
Poor accuracy. Poor Kyle Pitts didn't stand a chance. And then they have Kyle Pitts lining up so much on the outside, he can't take advantage of linebackers or safeties either. He's pretty much a wide receiver. So it's just tough. It's really tough situation for Kyle Pitts. I think it'll be tough to know when to start him. And I think the down weeks might make it. I don't have anybody. He's my tight end. Where do I have him here? He's my tight end 7, but I'm just a little bit pessimistic. I'm pessimistic. You could say you're pessimistic about the rest of the players on this list. I feel like there's a big tier break at 6. What about you?
No, I understand the urge for caution when considering Kyle Pitts, but at the same time, this is a tight end that finished as tight end 6 his rookie season with just 1 receiving touchdown. Now, I know things are different. I think that may have been Matt Ryan's last season with the team. However, I think Desmond Ritter is far and away better than what we're going to see or what we saw from Marcus Mariota last season. Excuse me. His processing skills are what drew the Falcons to him, in the 3rd round when they'd already secured Marcus Mariota. I mean, bringing in Mariota felt like, literally the poster boy for bridge quarterback, right? Like it didn't feel like he was going to have a long leash. And I think as that last season went on, we saw that it was longer than we anticipated. And then of course, Kyle Pitts got hurt. Like it's not like he had the second half of the season to really have like a strong turnaround, but he did have 2 receiving touchdowns for what it's worth, versus his rookie season when he just had 1 and he finished as tight end 6. And again, this is another situation where I think the talent levels around him, rising up help him in any given situation. Not a lot of people talk about Matt Collins. He was the best wide receiver blocker in last year per PFF, per wide receiver rating. I think that's going to matter more than people think, being able to put him on the outside as, again, not someone that's going to scream down the field or create a lot of production on his own, but someone that can be on the field and play meaningful snaps, either blocking or, just basic route running to push Kyle Pitts back to the middle of the field. And then, like you said, drafting Bijan Robinson at his draft capital, he's going to have a huge role in this offense. And Drake London was one of those rookies that I mentioned before that went over that 825 passing yards. He led his team in targets last season, receptions and receiving yards. So the presence of Bijan, London, Pitts, for a younger upcoming quarterback like Desmond Ritter, I feel like people should be more excited than they are. This offense ranked 15th in most points scored last season with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, with Desmond Ritter learning behind him. I know, I get it. It's a bit laughable. I understand. But as
I'm
far
a
as
big
like
fan too.
You're what?
I have him in so many dynasty leagues. I hope you're right. I have him in so many dynasty leagues.
Who,
I'm just
Desmond?
thinking about I'm thinking about all my poor dynasty teams, my 20-odd dynasty teams that have Kyle Pitts on them.
Oh, Kyle Pitts. Okay, sorry. I decided to really roll the dice with a dynasty team. The roster wasn't looking great, but I had Lamar Jackson, I had Jalen Hurts, but I wound up trading Jalen Hurts for a whole mess of picks, like a whole nasty mess of picks. Like I brought in like JSN, Jahmyr Gibbs to the same team, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Chase Brown. I'm probably forgetting somebody else as well in there, but I got to roll with Desmond Ritter now, but I'm just absolutely stacked with all these other young players. So I'm really excited and very hopeful for this offense. That's for certain, but I just don't think that people should be so down on Kyle Pitts when we've seen the player and the talent and the skill and the athleticism be there. I think that we just need the rest of the offense to be more efficient. And I do believe I'm a firm buyer of that narrative this upcoming season. I do think this group is going to be a lot stronger.
We will move on to our tight end 7, George Kittle. We had him flip-flopped here. I have George Kittle. That was probably the toughest decision that I had was those two, but I put Kittle slightly ahead. Kittle has all the talent, one of the best athletes at, going way back to his college, one of the best athletes to ever grace the NFL Combine at the tight end position. But, great overall player, great blocker, does everything right, just blocks a little bit more than we want to, and is with Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel in a Brock Purdy-led offense. It's just tough to see where the targets are going to come from. Similar to a lot, my argument for Dallas Goedert, Brock Purdy just not going to be a prolific passer likely. 49ers have an easier schedule this season just due to the fact that the NFC West is a little down too, I think.
Bad. It's bad.
You're looking at a lot of games, I think. I was looking at the divisions they're playing too. You're looking at a lot of games where their 49ers are going to be up. What kind of role is George Kittle going to have when the role, they're going to be running a lot of Elijah Mitchell, I think. So with that, I think George Kittle, he was number 2 in fantasy points per game for tight end last year. However, it was, I'm sure if we did a stat, it would be like closer to tight end 15 to, tight end 12 or something than it was to Travis Kelce. So it was somewhere around 12 or 13 points a game where, Travis Kelce was far above that. So George Kittle, I think it'll be more of the same this season. It was nice to see the touchdown connection that him and Brock Purdy had at the end of last year, but I think he'll be wanting a lot of weeks due to the 49ers spread, the way they're going to spread the offense around.
Right.
Anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should all be higher on him, but the points that you just laid out are the reasons why I still prioritize drafting all these other guys that we mentioned ahead of him. So he finished as a top 5 tight end 4 out of his last 5 seasons, but last year that touchdown dependency was massive. He had 4 games where he scored 2 touchdowns or more, and 3 out of 4 of them came in the last 4 games of the season. Wow. And Brock Purdy was a big part of that, like that big part of his strong finish. So I have to believe there's something there between the two of them. But a lot of us in the fantasy community, I'm one of them, are on Brandon Ayuk taking a step forward. Like you mentioned, CMC and Debo already there. And this is a run-heavy offense already. So it's just tough for me to see him having, high volume. Like it feels like his finish at the tight end position is going to be very dependent, again, on those touchdowns. And it's tough for me to buy in that if both of those running backs are healthy, then they're not really getting their bulk share in the red zone. So that's my big concern. But like I said, I think that we should all be a lot higher on him than we are because, again, 4 top 5 finishes in the last 5 seasons, that's really consistent. And blocking does keep him on the field. I know that we want to see him do it less, but it keeps him playing a high amount of snaps. It's a tough situation.
His target rate last year was number 20 among tight ends. That is the amount of routes run for the amount of targets that he got. So yes, he was running right. He ran actually by the end of the season, he had ran the second most amount of routes for a tight end. However, just not getting the looks, unfortunately, from Jimmy and Brock Purdy. Up next, David Njoku. This is another one you had very close behind. We're going to be talking about the player that you had at number 8 in just a moment. But David Njoku, this is my big belief in Deshaun Watson bouncing back. This is a very strong offense. Jordan who was the double tight end that he had in the Houston Texans that he kept relevant each week? We kind of
it was Atkins, and who was the other guy?
Who was the other one?
Oh, it's going to drive me nuts. I know what you're talking about, though. It was insane.
It's just like when one of them missed time, you started the other one. He had a special connection with the tight ends. I think David Njoku, of course, is far more talented than those players were. Just a freak athlete. The only guy who could compete with Saquon Barkley in a shirtless him, DK Metcalf, and Saquon Barkley. Out there on the beach. They'd have their own Baywatch going. But
they would.
David Njoku, I think this is going to be a very good offense. David Njoku is going to flirt with being that second and third target every week behind Amari Cooper. And, Amari Cooper is going to have his down weeks too. David Njoku, a fantastic athlete. A lot of the tight end position, we're just looking for the situation around him. There's no, especially after Travis Kelce, and the top 6 guys, we're fishing for situations at this point. And I think David Njoku is set up to have his best season to date.
I agree with you. He was set up to have his best season to date last year, but he was only playing in, I believe, about 14 games. He finished with the same amount of touchdowns from the season prior with just 4, and he had a career high 58 receptions. This offense is going to be better no matter what. I'm a bigger buyer in Nick Chubb this season than I am Deshaun Watson. Another situation where you have a very good offensive line, top 3 per PFF offensive line rankings. So they're going to run the ball a lot, and I think that's what helps Deshaun Watson the most. And I like this team to get in scoring territory, often. Kareem Hunt's gone. You have a few more, pass-catching vacated targets available. And I like Elijah Moore. I like him a lot. I like Cedric Tillman, some of these, younger receivers playing behind Amari Cooper. But I think that Njoku's athleticism, his size, his speed and build, opening up those available targets in the middle of the field will benefit Watson, especially early on in the season. So he has a very safe floor as far as I'm concerned. And I think he's someone that could potentially, pop up to maybe 70 catches this year, maybe gets about 5 receiving touchdowns, and the yardage falls where it falls. But I think that volume alone can definitely potentially, given the right circumstance, get him to a top 5 finish this year.
Up next, you had one slightly, Evan Ingram. You had him one spot ahead of David Njoku in your rankings. What's your outlook on Evan Ingram this year? Another player who I have in a similar range. However, I think 2 spots lower than you just because of the fact that, yes, I think it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I see this offense as being very good, but there's Calvin Ridley, there's Zay Jones,
right,
and there's Christian Kirk. Travis Etienne is going to get a lot of work in the rush game too. What's your outlook on Evan Ingram this season?
I think this offense is going to be super efficient. Like you had just mentioned, all the weapons that they have, Ridley, Kirk, a nice 2-headed running back core of Bigsby and Travis Etienne. Love what they're working with there. I just think that again, that situation, being that they're going to be a little bit more pass friendly than the Browns offense, I give him that little bit of an edge over Njoku just because I feel like that's going to be the identity of the Browns this year is Nick Chubb. So because I think they're going to be much better than they were last season, and of course the year prior, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Ingram to clean up and have a handful of spike weeks. I'll be honest, I do think that either one of those guys can be, in that boomer bust category. They could be some weeks, more touchdown dependent than we'd like them to be because there are weapons around them. But at the same time, I just give him that little bit of an edge over Njoku because I see that offense passing the ball just a bit more.
Next, Tyler Higbee rounds out the top 10. This is a player who I see as the opposite problem of some of the guys on this list. I think he's going to get a ton of targets.
Okay.
I know Cooper Kupp got double-digit targets every time him and Matthew Stafford were out there. Tyler Higbee was too. This was a 2-man show out there. Matthew Stafford was literally only throwing the ball to these two. I think he was number 6 in target share among tight ends last year, or he finished as a tight end 6, one of those two. But he had a very productive year last year, and I see that continuing once again this season. It's going to be a similar offense. Not a lot happening after Cooper Kupp. I think Tyler Higbee is going to be a necessity more than, a luxury, not a luxury, but a necessity for this Los Angeles offense. You have him as a tight end 1 as well. What's your outlook on Tyler Higbee?
I like Tyler Higbee a lot. I just see that this offense probably needs to utilize their speed assets a little bit more. I see Van Jefferson being of great value this season to the roster and to our fantasy teams. I think he's going to be an ADP steal come the end of the year. Higbee, he had, 4 out of his first 5 games, 10+ targets. He only had one more game like that the rest of the season, and that was in week 16 against Denver. So definitely someone who falls into that boomer bust category. There was, after that, he had, 2, 6, 1 target, 8, 6, 0, 5, 3, 5. That brought us to week 16 where he had 9 for 11, 94 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. A huge week, probably his best finish of the year. But I felt like his numbers were really held up through that first handful of games. He's certainly someone that I want to get at value because the public is absolutely sleeping on Higbee, but I do still prefer some of these other weapons. Van Jefferson, Puka Nacua. Don't think that Ben Skoranek won't get his as well. He's going to get some random touches in this offense. If you see a domino fall with an injury to any one of those players, including Cooper Kupp, we've already seen him dealing with, I believe, some hamstring issues early on in camp. I think that will definitely propel his value. But I think in a lot of single QB leagues, I think you're going to see him go in like the last 3 rounds. I think he's an immense value. So I don't feel the need to rank him this high. Obviously, I have him at a tight end 1, but he does fall behind, another 2 players, at least for me, as far as priority, because I think that those guys have considerable breakout opportunities. And again, like I like Higbee, I like the opportunity, but I felt like his numbers last year were very top heavy. They were really held up through that first 5 to 6 games.
And guess what? Those two tight ends that you're referring to that you have them that you have ahead of them, I buried them in these rankings. Just so you
no
know.
worries. Hey, no worries. It's a volatile position, like we've said. Like you could go any which direction here. Honestly, I feel like people at this point, per training camp, hype, news, media, etc., you could have Sam Laporta in this conversation right here.
I'll have you know this is the only show that this is the first quote this is an original quote that you won't ever find in any other podcast ever again. The most excited I am to talk about a player this season is this episode is Dalton Schultz, because I have some fun stats for you. I know you have him as your tight end 10, and I can't wait to throw some amazing contract stats at you. Yeah, you should have seen my tweet before I came on. Fun fact.
No, he's not doing it for the money. He's a passionate guy. All right. He's
fact.
Doing it.
I don't know how many have already been cut, but there are 40 tight ends in the NFL this season set to have a higher annual salary on their contract.
It's fair. It's a fair argument.
40
it's a fair argument. But
more than one per team.
What about running backs not making any money? What about them? What about Barkley only making $11 million a year? Completely undervalued.
Oh boy.
He doesn't have a good agent. I mean, we're not drafting agents.
John Oliver is making like 6 times what he's making, but
is that his agent? I have no idea who his agent is.
I won't use them all. We'll save them for Dalton Schultz. But Pat Freiermuth is our next tight end at 11.
Okay.
Pat Freiermuth, he has a lot of intangibles, does a lot of things well, chain moving tight end. I think I really like the Kenny Pickett offense this season, and I still have him as a tight end 1. It's just the fact that I think, once again, I always tend to lean toward the more talented receivers. That's where you want to put the ball. Mm-hmm. I think Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee Harris are going to get plenty of looks.
Yep.
I think. And it's tough for me. Pat Freiermuth not been a red zone target so far. Of course, Kenny Pickett threw 7 touchdowns last year. Not many touchdowns to catch exactly. But Pat Freiermuth, somebody I'm just not super excited about, just because, once again, one of those tight ends, and I feel, we're always talking, I feel like I'm talking about the role in their offense a lot. And that's because a lot of these guys do rank really close, like you said. So the tight ends 8 through 16 on this list, it is more about situation, because they all have enough wiggle room. It's probably going to be within 1 fantasy point per game, all these guys.
I like Freiermuth in the sense of the player. I don't like the situation for him. I think that down the stretch last year, we clearly saw that this team favored running the ball more than passing it, and it worked for them. They were able to win the second half of their stretch, and there were just weeks where Freiermuth disappeared, and I feel like he doesn't have as safe a floor as he did in his rookie season when Ben Roethlisberger was throwing him the ball, and he had 7 receiving touchdowns. He went down to 2 last year. I do look at Kenny Pickett as a breakout potential quarterback, but again, similar to Dan Jones, like, how far can we really progress past 7 passing touchdowns? Like, can we get to 20? Can we get to 25? I'm optimistic that we can, but even in that sense, like, if that's happening, wouldn't we believe that it would be maybe to Najee Harris or to George Pickens or Deontay Johnson? Deontay Johnson's been a huge target hog. We've been banging the drum for him all summer. He's what, top 5 the last 5 seasons for most targets at the wide receiver position. I just have to believe that if all of these guys are healthy, that he's not going to command a huge share of the offense. Whereas Dalton Schultz, I have well ahead of him, I think will command a much larger target share, much more volume, and safer touchdown floor, as he's shown us that the ability to acquire those numbers in at least 3 straight seasons. That's where I'm at. I think that he's an incredible talent, young, athletic, can definitely be a big target in the red zone. But I just don't see that this offense is going to prioritize him as far as total volume and as far as, just attacking their defenses, right? Just attacking the opposing team. I think that they're going to run the ball a lot more than people believe. I think it's going to be a big Najee and Jaylen Warren season.
Greg Dulcich rounds out the top 12 tight ends. I can't think of a player with a higher ceiling and lower floor. The fantasy football player, community is riddled with players that have had just short windows of production like that. Although it is encouraging to see, like, when he was injured the first 6 games last season, the Denver Broncos immediately threw him into the lead tight end role the first game back. So they knew who their best tight end was. Greg Dulcich had some strong games down the stretch last year, faded a bit those final couple. Good athlete, he had immediate, people were hyping him up immediately when he was drafted in the 3rd round of the NFL draft last season. Mm-hmm. I have him right in line about with ADP here. He's a tight end, I believe, 1 in my rankings as well. I think this offense is going to be a lot better under Sean Payton. I think it's likely, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, one of them, both of them are going to be missing some time as well. I think Greg Dulcich has an opportunity. Like I said, it's just, there's a world where I could see another tight end, just because we see change in coaching staff, with these different players, it's hard, sometimes another player emerges into that role. So, and I know Adam Troutman and some other guys signed, not that I think that they're an immediate threat, but you never know, do know. So what's your thoughts on Greg Dulcich this season?
Sean Payton's banging that drum for sure. He's been loving Dulcich, been comparing him to the Taysom Hill and Jimmy Graham in recent reports, just the different ways that they can use him, the way that he's been impressed with his play in practice and in training camp. I think it's a nice situation to buy into, but again, I think they're going to run the ball a lot. Sean Payton loves to run the ball. If Javonte Williams is healthy, he's going to get his. Samaje Perine's going to play a significant role. And then he's still, even now with the Tim Patrick injury, he's going to have to, share passing touches with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, who's also been, having fans and media raving in training camp, fool me once, fool me twice. Hopefully he doesn't do it again. But I do think that it's more of a middled situation. With just 10 games played, he finished as tight end 29. I don't think that's terrible. But at the same time, the guys I have ahead of him, I think I'm willing to buy at their ADP or maybe even a smidge ahead of their ADP. Dulcich, I'm looking to get at his ADP or well after. And I do have to give us a call back because you said I couldn't do it, Emerson. You said that I couldn't trade a third-round pick for Greg Dulcich. It had to be a second. I was able to get it done. I had to throw in Irv Smith Jr. too, but I don't feel like that's an immense cost. I told you, if you start with a third, you can finish with a third. You might have to sprinkle something on there, but you can finish with a third. And that's exactly what I did.
Very nice. I do commend you working out. It seems like you always have a savvy trade.
It's true.
That you always come to do it. And I feel, it's easy to do. I feel like, if you have a couple suckers in your league, it's the leagues where you're playing with all the sharpshooters that it becomes tough.
Yeah, that Devonta Smith for Joe Mixon was we put that on the highlight reel for sure.
Up next here, we have your guy Chig Okonkwo. Break me down. Sell me on Chig Okonkwo. I'm nervous about the Tennessee offense.
Let's get Chiggy with it. Again, obviously you don't like seeing DeAndre Hopkins there if you're a Chig truther. But again, finishing at tight end 25 last season with very little time played, actually ahead of Dulcich with 17 games played, but he really wasn't getting involved until the second half of the season. I want to say from week 12 on. Andrew Robb, my co-host on the Best Ball Show, huge truther. I certainly have a high exposure to Chig and Best Ball, been drafting teams all summer well prior to the Hopkins signing. And this isn't a team that's going to pass the ball a ton, but I do believe that unloading the box is going to help Chig just as well as it's going to help Derrick Henry. And the presence of DeAndre Hopkins is absolutely going to do that. So Derrick Henry faced a loaded box on 38% of his carries last year. That's a career high. And it's been about 34% on average through the past 5 seasons. Clearing up that box also helps Chig Okonkwo, who does a fair amount of blocking at 6'3", 238 pounds. So being able to free up that box as well, I feel is going to help him and create easier targets in the middle of the field. I'm not expecting a double-digit touchdown season, but I am expecting potentially anywhere from 50 to 60 catches and anywhere from 5 to 6 receiving touchdowns, because I think when you do get down to the scoring zone, you're a little bit more limited on options, and I don't believe that Tannehill is going to just absolutely rocket the ball to DeAndre Hopkins with a high volume. I think that the touches are going to be very middled in this core of receivers between Hopkins, Chig, and Treylon Burks, who has also just been blowing our minds per training camp, just been making some absolutely nasty and ridiculous plays. I think Chig's going to be up there as well. I just think that you're getting him at a little bit better value right now because of the Hopkins signing, and I'm willing to buy that dip. Again, someone that I was willing to spend on a little bit ahead of ADP, and now I'll take the bit of the discount that I'm getting, because again, he wasn't a factor in the first half of the season. He was barely getting any touches, if any. Still might as well have been a healthy scratch, but I feel like he's going to be an impactful player on this roster this year. And again, someone that I'll take the discount on given the situation.
I have him more as he's about a fringe starter here. I have him more as a streamer, more as a mid tight end too.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly due to the fact he's very athletic, but just like you were talking about with George Kittle, he's not going to be out there with blocking plays. He's very small. And it's tough for me to see Ryan Tannehill supporting multiple fantasy relevant receivers. I think it's going to be Chig's going to have his couple weeks this year. He's going to, the weeks that he scores touchdowns are going to be the weeks, of course, that you wanted to start him. However, I don't see him probably being fantasy relevant outside of those weeks. So what does that mean? The 5 or 6 weeks you're going to want to be streaming him, paying attention to the matchup. If Treylon Burks is looking good, that's going to be trouble for Chig, I think. If Derrick Henry, of course, is going to receive the lion's share of the offense, and then it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins probably receiving the bulk of the targets. Treylon Burks. I just don't know what's going to be left for Chicken. I know we're getting in. There's everybody, pretty much everybody on this list we can say is probably a streaming candidate at this point, but I definitely have Chig a few spots lower.
I think given ADP, like the names that we've already discussed, you should easily be getting Chig as like a 2 or a 3 potentially if you're going like tight end heavy. But I think in like tight end premium leagues, he's going to be a very good asset as your tight end 2 on your roster. I don't recommend going into your draft and prioritizing him as like your first tight end. You've really faded the position if that's the case. But again, because of what's going on right now, I'm thinking that you're getting him at a much better discount and you won't have to pay a premium price, especially if you were drafting like, redraft teams a month ago or 3 weeks ago.
That's a very, very good point. And with that, we'll jump into a guy that I have a couple spots ahead here. That's Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet, tell me about your guy. I'm excited to see about what Justin Fields works with last season. That he had some touchdown upside, and I'm very excited to see what Cole Kmet can do. I think with the breakout, we were a little too early last season. That's what people were predicting, and I think that 2023 could actually be the year Justin Fields is going to take a step forward as a passer. I hope so, at least, where maybe we're going to see upwards more than 25 pass attempts at least. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I love Cole Kmet. I think he should be in your top 5 if we're talking tight end money. But sadly, I think that, Dalton Schultz, again, will probably finish with more targets, more catches, touchdowns. It could be anywhere up in the air. But I think that he's just in a boom or bust category. Looking back to last season, he had a terrible start. He had, 2 targets through the first 2 weeks. So he really came on strong to finish the season, when Justin Fields was able to really unleash himself. But he just still falls in that boom or bust category for me. They're still going to run the ball a lot. There's still a lot of weapons there. DJ Moore coming there obviously is going to devalue his target share. I think Chase Claypool being there for a full season is also going to do the same. They invested a ton in both of those guys.
Chase Claypool is dead. He is dead.
Okay. One of my
bury him in the backyard.
Okay. All right. Per the media. I mean, if the media dictated how players were used, how many snaps they played, if they were good at blocking or not good at blocking, I guess so. I mean, who are you going to have on the field for blocking downs? Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, or Chase Claypool? Who do you want to use?
I mean, I guess
we'll let you play OC.
Are you just going to tell people you're going to run? Are you just going to be telling people you're going to run the ball because Chase Claypool can't do
he won't be
else?
the only guy out there. Obviously, you're going to have him mixed in, but he's going to play a lot of downs. He's going to play a lot of snaps. They invested a lot in Chase Claypool. They're not just leaving him on the sideline to do nothing. Yeah, there was some bad reports.
Going to be the number 4 target in a low volume passing offense. Yeah, absolutely.
4.
Yes.
Yeah, I just don't believe that. The media doesn't pick my fantasy team for me. I like to dive in a little bit more into the opportunities. And you're the draft capital guy. You're the one that convinces me to look far more into that than I have in the past. So giving up,
it's been a few years.
It's been a few years. Pick 32. We just gave up the last pick of the first round or the first pick of the second. I can't remember what it was for him.
That was a horrible decision. I
didn't make the trade. They did. I'm reading what the team is doing, not what the media is saying. Anyways, back to Cole Kmet. The situation is good, but what you had just mentioned, there's a bevy of targets there, right? Even if he's third in line, what does that make him? It makes him very similar to these other guys that we're talking about. And there are still a few other tight ends. Even Chig, I feel like, could have more targets than Cole Kmet this season. So it's a fun argument to have for sure. I mean, as a Bears fan, I want him to take an elite step forward. I just think that the offense is very deep this year, and it's going to be hard for him to bring home high volume numbers while competing next to Chase Claypool. Bada big.
All right. We are going to be talking next about the 550th highest played player in the NFL. That is
Played or paid?
Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to tell you, Justin, the NFL thinks just Dalton Schultz sucks at football.
They think
he sucks at football. I'm just letting you know that. They think Josh Oliver is better than Dalton Schultz.
I wonder if he'll play with like his check stub and his helmet or something like that. That would be cool. I don't know, man. I like players with like safe floors. Tight end 11, tight end 3, tight end 12. Last 3 seasons.
It's a different world. CJ Stroud is going to be a different world. I promise you.
He's going to push the ball down the field. He's just going to take risks on every throw. He's not going to throw to low A-dot players like Dalton Schultz.
The rookie quarterbacks, they have all these stats that show they don't just check down like you think they would. Like you think that it would be.
Listen, he's a low A-dot player. I'm not saying that he has to check down, but he is a safer completion inside and out. He's more of a receiver than he is a tight end. And I feel that his skill set is just as comparable to what you're going to get out of Nico Collins, out of any of those depth receivers, whether it's Robert Woods, Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, so on and so forth. I think the team runs the ball a lot and uses Dalton Schultz quite a bit. He's a guy that I can easily see leaving each week 6 to 8 targets. I just don't think that there's a significant argument against that.
Dalton Schultz set to make a $1.5 million base salary this season. That would rank 16th among punters this season. This season, ladies and gentlemen.
That's good. I like that. Again, it's just a safe floor. I mean, I don't know why he didn't make more money. Do you know why he's not making more money? I would have said, hey man, look at these numbers. Like I'm like a pretty good tight end. I don't know who his agent is, but I just don't get it.
Bring it in, Wavy. Give us the trade.
We're here for it.
We'll answer it for you. We're going to dive into another tight end first, though. Dalton Kincaid.
Be a Dalton Schultz trade.
I hope
Dalton Kincaid. How did this happen? No.
Dalton
Where's
Kincaid.
The flag? Where's the flag?
Number 16. Yes.
Ha!
Dalton Kincaid.
No.
Draft capital.
Oh
there it is again.
God.
Draft capital. Baby.
No.
Here we go.
No.
Buffalo Bills are going to be using their first round tight end this season. I see him. I think he's going to have some big weeks. I think you're going to be, by the end of the season, he's going to be in that streaming conversation, tight end that you're going to be wanting to play based on the matchup. Josh Allen says there is no moment that Dalton Kincaid isn't big enough for.
What does that mean? What is that? So Josh Allen said some stuff about this guy. Draft him now.
Insert cliche here. But
my gosh.
I'm excited about the talent. Give me the first round tight end. Might as well take the boomer bust.
I am taking Sam Laporta every day, all day over Dalton Kincaid this season. I have them close. I have Sam Laporta one spot ahead. The argument for Kincaid is there's no one overwhelmingly that good behind Stephon Diggs. I like Gabe Davis as a field breaker. But again, if you're looking for like that safer, low A-dot type of receiver and or tight end, Dalton Kincaid kind of fits that Dalton Schultz mold. Would you agree?
I'm
not saying he's the same guy, just the mold.
Dalton
just the mold.
Kincaid is such a more adept route runner, such a better athlete than Dalton Schultz. It's really not comparable.
You want to? Do we need to do a side bet on his A-dot this year, on Dalton Kincaid's A-dot? I'll take less than 8.
Dalton Schultz.
No, yeah, sure. Between the two, I was just saying over under. You can take the over. I'll take the under.
I'll look. We'll discuss that. I'll look at what that
unreal.
Out to,
I just see a much clearer path for production. For Sam Laporta this season, who has no competition, and in a team that had 5 less points than the Bills last year. The Lions' offense is just as accustomed to scoring now as the Bills are. They were both a high-scoring team last year. Me and Andrew got into this argument in our last show about Laporta and Kincaid, and I just see a much clearer path, like I said, for Laporta, who has also been buzzing in camp. I don't know if Jared Goff is got a huge boner for him like Josh Allen has for Dalton Kincaid, but he's looking great. He's also looking unstoppable, a la Darren Waller in his training camp, right? So I like the player. Don't get me wrong. Dalton Kincaid, good tight end, great draft capital, but I feel like this offense is going to be middled behind Stephon Diggs and a strong surging breakout season for James Cook. Those are the 2 big targets I want in this offense this year. I think Dalton Kincaid falls into that mix, but because he has that draft capital and people are so high on him, I'm seeing him ranked as tight end 12, Emerson, for this season. That's too much for me. Obviously, our ranking combined is far more favorable, no, but can you take him at ADP right now? Are you willing to take him as a 12th tight end off the board? Because that's his ADP per Fantasy Pros right now.
Oh, it's Kincaid?
Yes, 12. Tight end 12.
Yeah, that's too high. Like I
said, if you're in a
here.
draft lobby, are you going to take him when his name's coming up? Because that's how people draft. Like the era of the live draft is dead. May it rest in peace. It's my preference for sure. But now that we're all on Zoom, we're all living all away from each other, people are using online lobbies to draft. And Kincaid's number, even if they're not using Fantasy Pros ADP, that's a huge part of the public, ranking system. It's going to be in that margin from anywhere from 11 to 14. That's way too rich for me. Far too rich. Laporta more appropriately priced.
All right, we'll jump into Wavy's trade here. Even though I have pick number 5. Yes. Someone offered me his pick, which is number 9 in a 6th rounder. Redraft league. Probably not.
I'm trying to get the two sides of this here. So it's a redraft. Trade does include Schultz, even though he's mad underrated. Preach, Wavy, preach.
I don't understand. This doesn't make sense to me. But.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at here. So I have pick number 5. Someone offered me his pick, which is number 9 and a 6th rounder. I think we need to see the sides a little bit more clearly here.
I'm going to pretend like what he said about Schultz didn't exist. I don't think that's what he meant to say. So I'm going to say he's has the number 5 pick and somebody wants to move up from number 9 and using a 6th rounder. Actually,
I'm not doing that.
I'd probably take that. Who do you love? Is there a big? I think is there somebody that you love at number 5? You wouldn't be able to get at number 9. Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill.
I think that both of those guys you just named will probably be there.
But you can probably get Devontae at. Yeah, did not include Dalton. I figured that's what you meant. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I like the top 5 more. I think that there's a bigger drop off still at 9.
You can get Adams or Diggs, I bet, at 9. That's why I'm okay with getting a 6th rounder.
I don't think so. I think they probably fall in right after that, like anywhere from 5 to 8.
But then you're going to go, okay, somebody has to be left in. Eckler, then you're going to get Eckler or the RB2 then at number 9. Is there going to be 8 running backs that go, 8 wide receivers that go in the first 9 picks?
I like chasing that upside for Hill and a Cooper Kupp far more. Again, they got to fall to you there. For all I know, they could go. You could have Jamar Chase fall to you at 5 now with some of the dipping, from the Joe Burrow injury. I'm not buying it. I've gotten Jamar Chase at like pick 4 in best ball now. Like that's 2 spots, but you know what I mean? If something like that happens in your lobby, I just think it's too early. I don't know when your draft is, but I feel like we have a lot of movement still. For example, if like Cooper Kupp was like, oh yeah, he's going to miss 2 weeks. Sure. By all means, go ahead. That's going to propel Tyreek Hill's value. But I like that pick. I like that 5th spot. Moving to 9. I don't like that.
All right. Next up on these rankings, Sam Laporta, number 17, but now we are on to Gerald Everett. You did not have him ranked in your top 24 tight ends. I had him all the way up number 14. I'm big on Gerald Everett this season. Not that I love the player, but I think this is another situationship for fantasy managers. Gerald Everett, only 4 touchdowns last season. Highly targeted despite the disaster that was the Los Angeles offense, missing Rashawn Slater, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams at times, Justin Herbert, career low in touchdown passes. I expect them to bounce back this season, and I think Gerald Everett's going to be the recipient. A lot of touchdown passes. Of course, they're going to be throwing the ball down a lot more downfield with Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator as well.
Yeah, I don't hate the situation for Everett. I just think that there's so many weapons in this offense. Obviously, Eckler is going to have a huge share of it. He has like little to no competition at running back. Josh Kelly and rookie from last year, who slipping my mind. Who was it? Doesn't matter.
Anyways, are you talking about on their wide receivers?
No, on the running backs. It was Josh Kelly, and then it was someone else from last year.
Oh, I see. Spiller.
Yes, yeah, thank you. CJ Spiller. Yeah. But then you also obviously have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and now Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer, who was able to get some love last year as well. There's just a lot of mouths to feed. I think, you know what, you're right. He probably deserves to be in the top 24. It's just that I feel like there are so many other opportunities around him. He's highly categorized as a boomer bust tight end. I don't think there's a lot of touchdowns in the fold for him this year, and I don't think that there's a lot of high volume in the fold for him as well.
I see what you mean there.
Need an injury to Keenan or Mike Williams, and even when we saw that, he really wasn't a huge target hog or anything like that.
Thanks for the sub, Wavy. We appreciate that. I think that Keenan Allen, Mike Williams are likely to probably miss times at point this season, and I think this is going to be one of the more prolific. I think this is probably one of the most talented offenses in the NFL. This is one of the most talented teams in the NFL. I think Justin Herbert's going to be an MVP candidate. I think there's going to be a lot of fancy points in this offense. Up next, Trey McBride, fantastic sleeper. And you're on any draft right now. It's rarely I leave a draft without Trey McBride. My favorite tight end in last year's class, 1,100-yard receiving season in college, which is ridiculous for a tight end. Great athlete going into his second season.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Arizona offense isn't going to be great this season, but in this territory, I think he's worth the upside. I think he's going to have some big weeks. What are your thoughts?
I like the player a lot. I don't love the situation. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I feel like James Conner is going to get a lot of love until the wheels fall off. He very well could lead the team in targets. I have no idea. It's just a very, very questionable situation. When it comes to redraft, I really don't want him on my team as my second tight end. I feel like I can get him as my third. But in a lot of leagues, Emerson, I'm not drafting 3 tight ends. So I do feel like he could be a very early waiver wire darling. I think in a lot of leagues, if you're drafting anywhere from like 15, 16, 17 players, kind of these shallower, like more casual leagues, I don't think he gets drafted, to be honest with you. There might be some sharps in that lobby or in your league that will prioritize him, but he feels like someone who's free that I could potentially get with like my last pick and even in like an 18, 17 team league, right? So I like the player. He also still will have Zach Ertz competing with him at some point. I know he's on the PUP list now, but they traded for him. So they're either going to trade him again to a worthy situation with a team that's maybe chasing a playoff run or trying to just, hey man, I know that nothing's going to happen this year for you on this roster. Maybe we can work something out and move you for, a 7th or 6th round pick or something like that. I'm not even sure that's likely to happen. Unless you see like a huge injury for another team. But I feel like this position in general has a lot of depth. And so I'm also predicting that move not to happen. So I feel like he's going to be kind of middled on a bad offense that's probably playing for a top 5 pick. Now in fantasy, that could be a good situation, right? End of the year, he could have a nice stretch of games, but very, very strong consideration for boom or bust. Yeah, I just feel like it's very... His highs could be super high. He could have 10 targets a game. He could have 2 targets a game. I don't know what we're going to get out of him. Love the player. Don't love the situation.
Juwan Johnson up next for us. Actually, this is a 3-way tie. Juwan Johnson, Trey McBride, and Hayden Hurst. Trey McBride, the previous player.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that.
3-way tie here, so I'll throw them all up here. Juwan Johnson, Hayden Hurst. What are your thoughts on their seed? Juwan Johnson obviously gets the contract extension.
Right.
I don't love, once you're changing quarterbacks, changing coaches for one of these middling kind of skilled players, I think is always a risk.
Mm-hmm.
He did get the nice contract. So he'll certainly be the lead tight end in New Orleans. I don't think that'll translate to a significant role though. Much of his production was touchdown based last season. Derek Carr, not much of a touchdown thrower. And, of course, Hayden Hurst, rookie quarterback, could be the safety valve that we were talking about before, but you'd be surprised how infrequently the rookie quarterbacks do target the tight end. But who else is he going to throw the ball to in Carolina? What's your thoughts on those two?
Hayden Hurst definitely in that same category with Trey McBride, huge boomer bust candidate. See, that's the thing is like you brought up the contract for Johnson. I feel like, okay, there's a commitment level there, right? This team won't stop signing tight ends. They brought in Foster Moreau, very familiar with Derek Carr. They brought in Jimmy Graham. Thought he was done. Thought he was gone.
Dead.
Dude, go
Moral
read what
support.
they're saying about him on Twitter, man. It is ridiculous.
Moral
All the Jimmy
support.
Graham boners that are going around out there. It is ridiculous. Yeah, player, coach, whatever it is. But if he's on the field, are we in trouble here? Like, are we going to be screwed out of like $1 million in Best Ball Mania because this guy crabs like 4 touchdowns on like 30 targets this year? I'm going to be real upset about it. I did draft 1 share. I got 1 share of Jimmy Graham. Last pick. I made it happen. Don't worry. It was drafted like as my 3rd tight end on that team. But regardless, like the situation is not looking that good for Juwan Johnson right now with the commitments that they're throwing around at tight end. Didn't even bring up Taysom Hill, who is just he is the original Joker. I know Jamie was preaching about Sean Payton considering Dulcich that type of Joker, Kamara, Sproles, Taysom Hill role, but like he is that guy. Throw him anywhere, receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback. Like I don't get it. They do. I don't understand why it's a thing, but it is. It's just tough to project what Juwan Johnson's going to bring home. I like the talent. I like what I saw last year. He seems like he has sure hands in the red zone. I'll chase that upside at this ADP. I have no problem with it. Hayden Hurst, while they both are boomer bust, I will say, like they're going to be touchdown dependent players, he feels lower on the safety volume for sure. That offense has a more weapons than I think that we want to believe. DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, they drafted Jonathan Mingo. They have Hurst. They have, a couple of running backs in Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. And Bryce Young will probably run the ball a fair amount, right? He's going to use his legs at some point. I just don't see him having a ton of high volume. I think he could be a decent bye-week tight end, or, worst case, you're in like a 16-team league, and he might be able to give you value. Hayden Hurst is going to be on the waiver wire in the majority of casual redraft leagues come the start of September. That's my firm belief.
All right. Next is a player I did not have in my top 24, but I could certainly see him finishing that way. Tyler Conklin. I just am a little bit muddied about. I know he's leading the tight end room at the moment. Just not a guy who I see as a player who's surely going to hang on to that. But there's always a little bit of volatility, I think, for a player like Tyler Conklin. So, but we've seen Robert Tonyan, another middling talented player, similar to Robert Tonyan, who might say be very successful with Aaron Rodgers. Right. You have him, I think, about tight end 16. That's still ahead of consensus. Why is he set up for success this year?
He's actually finished as tight end 16 in back-to-back seasons, oddly enough.
There you go.
Yeah, so, getting him at his current ADP, I think is – I'm going to call it a steal. He is my highest exposed tight end right now through 110 drafts on Best Ball Mania. So I have a lot of confidence in him, and he's getting one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. I think this is just another situation where it's a vacuum for scoring points, and he has the opportunity to clean up anywhere from 5 to 7 receiving touchdowns and maybe a plethora of spike weeks. He is certainly a tight end that I feel comfortable coming onto my roster as my second tight end drafted because I like the situation. If you look at his numbers, he was far better without Zach Wilson in the lineup last season. His first handful of games, 4 for 7 and a touchdown, 6 for 9, 40 receiving yards, 8 for 8, 84 receiving yards, and then 3 for 5 for 52 receiving yards. After that, they just dumped him. He was done. And it was mostly on the back of Zach Wilson coming in and taking over. I just feel that Aaron Rodgers can propel him potentially ahead of those last 2 finishes, these past 2 seasons, ahead of tight end 16. So I see him as an immense value coming into this year. I think that he should be drafted in all redraft formats, whether it be one of these like 15 or 16 team leagues, 20 to 24, whatever it is. I have a high outlook and high outlook for him this year. Jamie's mentioned this on one of my other shows. You should definitely consider Ruckert for Dynasty. I'm all about that. That's no problem. I just think that for this specific season, best ball redraft type of formats, I think Conklin's going to have a presence more than people want to buy in on.
Next, I am higher on consensus on not 1, but 2 Buffalo Bills tight ends. I'm dragging Dawson Knox into these rankings at tight end 23, but I have him higher.
You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
I want it both ways. I have it both ways. I think there's room. I think we're going to see 2 tight end sets this year. I think we are going to see them both be fantasy relevant. I think we're going to see even Dalton Kincaid splitting out wide a little bit. I'm excited. Dawson Knox got a big contract this year. They're going to want to use him too, and I'm not too intimidated by Gabe Davis, but I think all these guys can be successful at their ADPs. We're not giving Josh Allen enough credit for being a prolific passer who's going to have multiple fantasy relevant receivers. I think struggled with injury last season, but I'm looking forward to this season for the Buffalo Bills offense.
Appreciate Sam here in the chat, shouting us out. Great channel. We do not have any female co-hosts. Maybe we'll work on that this upcoming season. Just a bunch of basic ass white dudes, rocking headbands and riding bikes for best ball drafts and whatnot. We try to have fun, keeping it cool while keeping it real. Back to Dawson Knox, you punk. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're making my Dalton Kincaid point for me. How many other teams here do we have 2 tight ends on this list? Come on. Sam Laporta over Dalton Kincaid. Bang the table, Emerson.
Nope,
Sam Laporta over Dalton Kincaid. You're killing me.
I think I might have Dawson Knox ahead of Sam Laporta.
That's anti-religious. Stop it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Stop
That's not true.
So Dalton.
No, I do. Yes, yes.
Stop it. Dawson Knox is the reason that I don't have Kincaid ahead of a guy like Laporta or those other players. Or no, I mean, I would still have Kincaid over Everett, McBride, Juwan, Hayden Hurst. I would have him ahead of that because of the situation. Again, similar to Laporta, it's a situation where you're in a high-scoring offense. Someone's got to have spike weeks, all right? He has opportunities for those like big 2 touchdown games, but a better best ball draft pick than he is a redraft draft pick. I have 0 shares of Dalton Kincaid in comparison, and I'm saying that's a better scenario to draft him. Dawson Knox, he's going to have some spike weeks. I don't want him on my team as my second tight end. I think that, again, he might be a waiver wire darling. Again, Dalton Kincaid going at tight end 12. Like, that's the market. That's what the public is saying his value is. That's a complete overreaction to his draft capital. I like Dawson Knox so much that I bring Kincaid much farther back. I'm okay with this, but I would still have Knox outside of my top 24.
I'm not even done with the players that I have ranked ahead of Sam Laporta, as I still have Michael Mayer.
You're going to be a bald man. You are going to be a bald man this year. I'm sorry.
I have Michael Mayer still ranked ahead of Sam Laporta for 2023.
Ouch. That's some Austin Hooper disrespect right there, friend.
That's exactly what that is. Michael Mayer is the most pro-ready tight end in this draft class. This might be the most. Michael Mayer
I'm a Notre Dame snob, so you're preaching to the choir here. I have no problem with Michael Mayer.
Has an argument to be the best college tight end of all time. Over 800 yards the last 2 seasons at Notre Dame, a huge school. Every other player with his kind of dominator rating in college production plays for North Dakota State University of Wyoming, the Wyoming campus.
Was that Trey McBride?
It might as well be. He played at Colorado State, a slightly larger school.
Okay. My bad.
But these are all these random schools that these players. But Michael Mayer did this at a huge college. Not a great athlete, but set up to be a leading target and get immediate playing time for the Oakland Raiders. Also
he's not a leading target. Devontae Adams is a leading target.
Of course, but I said a leading target, like a leading cast member. It doesn't have to be the leading cast member, a leading cast member.
Okay.
Also, Mike Gesicki also is tied in here. A guy who was top 5 in slot snaps 3 years in a row, finishes a top 12 tight end. Finishes number 16 in slot snaps last year and fell off the face of the earth. Fanning production not used correctly.
Exactly.
What do you think? Exactly. What do you think about his prospects in the New England offense?
Another immense value per the situation. I am fading Hunter Henry. He had a nice season a couple of years ago, but he was super touchdown dependent. I believe he went from 9 in 2021 down to 2 receiving touchdowns in 2021 to 2022, he regressed by 7 touchdowns. Trying to get that out correctly. Even Gesicki last year had 5 in an offense where he wasn't prioritized at all. The prior 3 seasons, tight end 9, tight end 7, tight end 12, because he gets that type of friendly, low A-dot, slot tight end type of usage. We've seen Bill Belichick do that a lot with the tight end position. So I'm very excited about him this upcoming season.
With that, we'll wrap it up here.
Oh, let's get some of the questions here. We got Wavy saying he's keeping the draft pick. They can't wait. Appreciate the help. No problem. I'll just bring up the chat. That's all before we head out. It's been a good show. Want to recognize them. Appreciate everybody in here riding with us. If you haven't already, be sure to smash the subscribe button, the follow button, smash the like button as well. Follow us on Spotify and Apple. We got Sam saying, what can be a reasonably objectable statement as it relates to the NFC East Conference this upcoming season? Who can confirm the fact that the Ravens will have the biggest bandwagon following? I'm not really sure. I live in Maryland. It's a very split atmosphere between the Commandos and the Ravens, all things being said. Kelsey went 3rd, he said. Interesting. That means you're definitely going to get some value. Picked Hill 5th. There we go. So he was doing this live. That's fantastic. I'm glad that we were able to give you some actionable advice, like right on the show here, right on the spot for your draft. I think you'll agree that was a smart hold then, right, Emerson?
I thought that Hill would be available there, and like I said, I think the Adams, Diggs, and Lamb tier is fairly close to Hill. I don't mind it either way. I thought it was a pretty fair trade.
No, I mean, I'm just wondering what he would have made up with that, though, with an extra pick in the 6th round.
Extra starter depends on how many starters you're lit. I wouldn't do it if it was 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, but you got a lot of flex spots in there. I think it's something to consider.
Fair enough. Good stuff, though, either way. Great show. Appreciate everybody coming and riding with us.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll be back. We've been cranking out these rankings the last month, but I'll be back with a brand new topic next Sunday. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Football season is very close, everybody. Have a great rest of your
baby.
Enjoy the work week.